Hey YouTube, this is Jack Connor. I just wanted to pop in with my thoughts on The Force Awakens. Now, everybody is talking about The Last Jedi. I want to look at how The Force Awakens holds up now that we have had time to digest The Last Jedi. Now, before I get into it, I just want to say that I am actually not a hater of Disney's Star Wars. I really enjoyed The Force Awakens and Rogue One. I thought they were both fine movies. I like Rogue One better than The Force Awakens, but I quite enjoyed The Force Awakens for what it was. My review at the time for The Force Awakens would have been very positive. I think I called it Star Wars light. It felt very Star Warsian, but kind of lighter, a little bit more kid-friendly in some ways, not quite as grungy. The main characters, Rey and Finn, were like puppy dogs. They didn't have a whole lot of edge to them. There was not a whole lot of edge in that movie, and there was actually more edge, I would argue, in A New Hope. Felt slightly more sophisticated. But that said, I quite enjoyed The Force Awakens at the time. It was very much a reboot or a remake of Episode 4, and that was very annoying, but it was well done for what it was. Lots of practical effects, good pacing, reasonably good score, good performances. Not as well written as it could have been. I think there should have been a main character. Rey, I believe, is supposed to be our main character, but she actually doesn't get as much screen time as she could, and her personal development is not what it could have been. She is not really our main character in The Force Awakens. She doesn't drive the plot. Main character drives the plot. Luke Skywalker blew up the Death Star in the first movie. It's his quest that drives the plot of the entire trilogy. Not so with Rey. She hasn't really done much so far, but we'll get into that. So anyway, I enjoyed The Force Awakens for what it was. I defended it against all comers who denounced it as a remake, as a bad movie, because I was certain that even though it was, pretty much a step-by-step remake of A New Hope, that they did that because they felt it was necessary to reintroduce a new generation to what a Star Wars movie was and is and should be. It's not the video gamey prequel kind of thing. It's a more grand, more with practical effects, more real, lived-in universe. With a little bit more epic feel to it and a fast, fun pace. So anyway, I defended The Force Awakens. I said, well, you just wait. In the next movie, in Episode 8, all will be revealed now that we've set up this wonderful universe again and with the correct pacing and tone. Now we can have new stories with those characters. It'll be great. You just watch. Okay, so that was my attitude going into The Last Jedi. It was very positive, very enthusiastic. I couldn't wait to see what they did. So now that The Last Jedi has come out, I have not had a great urge to rewatch The Force Awakens. I'll be honest, it really killed my enthusiasm for that movie. But I thought it would be very interesting to go back and review The Force Awakens in light of The Last Jedi. So, all of that preamble out of the way, let's get into it. All right, so the movie starts and we are introduced to Rey, and it is slowly revealed that she is, will be a Jedi, that she has access to the Force, and she has some mystery around her parents. It's very intriguing, and when you're watching The Force Awakens, you're really hooked, and you want to know what the answers to these questions are. What's up with her parents? She touches Luke's lightsaber, and she has a flash where she sees her parents leaving. She has a flashback where she sees her parents leaving the planet, so we know her parents are out there somewhere doing something interesting, probably plot related. Then she might be stuck on Jakku in some sort of plot related event. There was much speculation about that. I'm perfectly happy that none of that speculation was true, but I am not happy that it was not plot related. So I'm happy to be surprised, to have my expectations subverted, but it has to have been done in a quality way, where there was an earned twist that led somewhere, that there was a plot reason for it. And there was no plot reason in The Last Jedi for undoing the questions that J.J. Abrams set up in The Force Awakens. And I've written down a couple of notes here so I don't forget anything. So Rey is set up to have these interesting mysteries around her. She has her parents left her there for some reason. She has these powerful Force abilities. And she learns about the Force, and as soon as she learns about it, pretty much, she has access to almost the full range of Force powers. Mind control, telekinesis, everything. So a lot of fans have speculated that maybe she had acquired those abilities in the mind meld with Kylo Ren. And I am perfectly happy to accept that explanation if they had addressed it and given that explanation in The Last Jedi. If somebody had said, hey, Rey, where'd you get these powers? How come you're so good at this stuff? If she had said, when Kylo Ren touched my mind, I touched his and got some of his learning. That would have answered all those questions and would have been a good way to skip the training montage. They did find a way to skip the training montage in a less satisfying way in The Last Jedi, by just not having Rey train and not answering the question how she got so powerful. So her getting her powers, when you rewatch The Force Awakens, you're intrigued by that. Don't be. Doesn't go anywhere. Same with her parents. You watch The Force Awakens, you're intrigued by why did her parents leave her there. We clearly see them leave her there and then fly off in a spaceship when she's a little girl and she's crying and watching them leave in the flashback. In The Last Jedi, it's revealed that somehow they're dead on Jakku, that they were junk traders, sold her for drinking money, which obviously doesn't make any sense because we saw them leave the planet. They could afford to leave the planet. She was old enough to have understood that they were leaving her there. So she would have known something, and they would not have been on Jakku. And if they could afford to get off the planet, they could probably afford to buy a freaking beer. So that doesn't match. Inconsistent continuity error. All right. Finn was a very charming and likable character in The Force Awakens. I couldn't wait to see what they did with him in Episode 8. Well, they totally botched Finn. They basically gave him the same arc that he had in The Force Awakens. He was running away, but he found a reason to fight. Well, in The Force Awakens, his reason to fight was Rey. And The Last Jedi, his reason to fight was the rebels, the resistance, whatever. And there was some weird social justice stuff thrown in there. Apparently he learned that riding horses was evil, so he needs to help overthrow the evil bad guys. Makes sense. Makes sense. Well done, Rian Johnson and Kathy Kennedy. So anyway, same arc that he had in The Force Awakens. So when you're watching The Force Awakens, and you say, oh, what a great, fun character. He's so charming and got so much charisma. I just can't wait to see what they do with him. Well, on the rewatch of The Force Awakens, after having seen The Last Jedi, you come crashing down to reality because they don't do anything with him at all. They just rehash the exact same arc, but in a less fun way. They pair him with Rose, who is a pretty lame character. You know, every word out of her mouth is just social justice this, social justice that. She doesn't contribute anything to the plot. She actually does nothing for the plot. So it's actually kind of funny because right at the end, when the twist comes and they are betrayed by Benicio del Toro, she is just about to fulfill her plot function, which is some sort of engineering thing. I forget what it is. She's just about to fulfill that and justify her presence in the movie when they are betrayed. So she was cock-blocked by Benicio, just like she cock-blocks Finn later. Kind of funny. All right, so Poe in The Force Awakens is this great heroic presence. He's really the most old, original trilogy character of The Force Awakens. He's very much a gung-ho hero with a capital H. And so it's a lot of fun to have this fun, exciting, charismatic, dashing hero in the movie. It's, very appropriate for a series inspired by, Flash Gordon and the old pulp sci-fi novels and graphic novels and shorts and movies. So Poe is a lot of fun, and he is set up to be a great hero, a great heroic force, and that is a good thing. But then we get to The Last Jedi. Well, apparently he's just an arrogant flyboy that should listen to his betters, and all his heroing actually gets a bunch of people killed, and he is responsible for the mass carnage that we see in The Last Jedi, and the reason why the Resistance, which has an entire fleet at their disposal and is a large force, well, at the end of The Last Jedi, they are reduced to a few people aboard the Millennium Falcon. And that can be all put on Poe in his terrible decisions and rash actions in The Last Jedi, showing that men shouldn't be heroes, men are toxic, masculinity is toxic, heroism itself is toxic, and they should just listen to the purple-haired social justice lady. So thank you for screwing up a great hero, a great heroic presence in Star Wars. He was really our best heroic presence in the new trilogy, in a way that Rey and Finn really aren't. Rey has potential to get there, and she might have gotten there, but she wasn't really there. Poe was. He was already the dashing lead, leading the charge, fighting the good fight. Rey was on her way to learning how to fight the good fight. In theory, of course, she never learned anything because she already knew it, apparently. But, so they ruined a heroic presence in The Last Jedi. You're watching The Force Awakens, you think, oh, what a fun, exciting hero. I can't wait to see how much ass he kicks in Episode 8, what he does, what plot significance he does. He had a great chemistry with Finn. Hopefully they would go off and do something exciting and fun, and I can't wait to watch it. Well, on the rewatch of The Force Awakens, none of that has any bearing on what happens in The Last Jedi. Finn and Poe are separated. They go their separate ways. Finn's arc is simply rehashed. He's teamed up with a terrible character. Poe is unmanned and belittled and told that his heroing is bad and toxic, and indeed his heroing leads to the utter destruction of the Resistance. So thank you, Rian Johnson and Kathy Kennedy, again. All right, so Luke, great character, right? The entire original trilogy is built around him and his journey. He is the ultimate hero, the greatest hero of American popular culture. He is the mythic hero of our time. So I couldn't wait to see what they did with him, my childhood hero, in Episode 8. And they set him up to do great things. In The Force Awakens, the first line of The Force Awakens is Luke Skywalker has vanished. The entire plot of the movie is about finding Luke Skywalker. At the very end of the movie, they actually do find Luke Skywalker, and that is the cliffhanger. What is he going to do? What plot significance does Luke have? What has he been doing all these years? Why did he go finding the first Jedi temple and leaving Matt behind him. Obviously, that's hugely interesting. We want to know what he's doing, what exciting adventures he and Rey are going to have together, how he's going to train her to be even more powerful than she already is. So, a lot of questions were raised in The Force Awakens that really had us salivating for The Last Jedi. But, again, upon the rewatch of The Force Awakens, there's a huge letdown. It ruins the experience in large part because we know what happens to Luke in The Last Jedi. Again, a huge continuity break. He didn't go off to find the first Jedi temple for any particular reason. He didn't seemingly leave a Matt behind. He didn't want anybody to find him. He just went there to die. He was a coward that went there to die. He let the galaxy go to hell, let Snoke and the First Order take over, even though he could have done something. In the burgeoning First Order, the great Jedi going and collecting all the young Force users, wielding them, leading them in an army to defeat the fledgling First Order. Very doable when the First Order was young and small. Instead, he let them grow and let them take over and become Empire Part 2. So thanks, Luke, and thanks, Ryan and Kathy Kennedy, again, for ruining a great hero. And moreover, undoing the plot of the new trilogy, because the plot of this new trilogy was to find Luke and have him do something plot significant that was going to be revealed in Episode 8. Well, they did not do that. Luke does nothing plot significant. There are no particular plot developments in Episode 8. Nothing actually happens in Episode 8 except that the Resistance is whittled down to a few people. You can argue that Snoke dying is a plot development, but really there is just another Sith-like leader of the First Order that is now in charge. So structurally, nothing has really changed. It's just the First Order versus a small band of scrappy rebels. So nothing has really changed. There are no plot developments in the Last Jedi. Luke accomplishes nothing. He doesn't even train Rey, for God's sakes, which is the one thing we thought we could count on. So Luke does nothing. He does not fulfill what it was set up for him to fulfill in The Force Awakens. So when you're watching The Force Awakens, it ruins the experience because it's not going anywhere. The whole plot of The Force Awakens, finding Luke Skywalker, and they go to great lengths to find Luke Skywalker, and they ultimately find him. We know all of that is for nothing. All right, Kylo Ren. Now, Kylo Ren is interesting because I think he's probably the only one that benefits from the sequel. He is the only one that is made more interesting, and his character progresses in The Last Jedi. We have him Force Skyping with Rey. We have some character stuff there. We have him, will he kill his mom or will he not kill his mom? His struggle with Snoke. His character is deepened and enriched in The Last Jedi. At the same time, he loses his mask, which makes him less menacing and less Vader-like. It makes him more human and probably a better character, but less a figure of evil like Vader was. So, and then they get rid of Snoke, so now we don't have a figure of ultimate evil like a Star Wars movie or any epic fantasy should have. So, although they have made Kylo Ren more interesting, they have ultimately done him a disservice in the villain aspect of these movies, a disservice by making him more human and then killing Snoke. So, moving on. The Death Star, the Starkiller Base. That was a rehash of the Death Star in the two of the three original Star Wars movies, which is pretty lame. You watch The Force Awakens. Oh, that's just another Death Star. Well, okay, I accept it because I understand they have to have something to blow up. It's a little bit more powerful than the Death Star. It can destroy an entire star system now. Well, it's pretty lame, but I can accept it for what it is. They're trying to introduce a new generation to what Star Wars is. That's about blowing up symbols of evil. Good guys destroying something, iconically, to, defeat evil. That's fine, I guess. I'll take it this one time. I think it would have been far more interesting and far more plot relevant if they had been building the Starkiller base throughout the trilogy, and that had been the ultimate goal of the First Order, and it was a multi-volume event. They were, building toward that. I think that would have been really fascinating. We could have seen the rebels, the resistance, try to defeat that over the course of several movies. We could have gotten really involved and had some nice long-form storytelling there. And we wouldn't have had a situation like we have now, where we're just going to have to build something again for the rebels to blow up. George Lucas had the problem with Return of the Jedi. He needed something to blow up at the end of the movie. So he just redid what he did 2 movies ago. And they're going to have to find something to blow up. So instead of falling into that narrative trap, and I'm a writer, I think of these things, I think of ways out of them, they could have not done that and instead built toward that. Built Starkiller Base over a few movies, had the First Order trying to acquire various things they needed to build it, and have that be the mechanism that drives the plot. They need the core of the thing, the X of the thing, whatever. So, also, Starkiller Base doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, right? Because we have seen The Last Jedi. We know they didn't need to go to Starkiller Base. The rebels, Han Solo, Rey, Finn, none of them needed to fight over Starkiller Base. They didn't need to have a big aerial battle over Starkiller Base. They could have simply strapped a hyperdrive onto a big asteroid and floated into Starkiller Base and destroyed the whole thing, because you can weaponize hyperdrive. There was no reason to have a battle for Starkiller Base. It was pointless. It would not have happened in that universe. That's called a continuity error, when you have something in one movie that renders something invalid in a previous movie, or renders that invalid. So weaponizing hyperspace creates a huge continuity error for all of the movies. If you can do that, why haven't they been doing that? It makes no sense. It breaks the reality of that universe. And no, that is not a small thing. That is a big glaring error in The Last Jedi. Phasma. Phasma, a really cool looking character, kind of like Boba Fett. She doesn't accomplish quite as much as Boba Fett does. Boba Fett at least tracks Han Solo down and summons Vader to get him. So Boba Fett actually accomplishes a plot function in Empire Strikes Back. Phasma doesn't really do anything. She just looks cool, and it's implied that she will fulfill her function in a future movie. We all know she's going to escape the trash compactor at the end. So when you're watching The Force Awakens, you're thinking, okay, great, well, she was wasted, but I can't wait to see what she does in the next movie. Well, that's completely undone. That's another unfulfilled hope, and again, kind of ruins that character when you're on the rewatch of The Force Awakens, because she is not going to do anything in The Last Jedi except serve a really weak battle scene that is ultimately ended by a droid, a ridiculously overpowered BB-8, who has almost as many abilities as Rey has. So, thank you, Ryan and Kathy. So you watch The Force Awakens, and you're enjoying it, but it is dependent entirely on the sequel to justify its setups and to progress its plot. I really enjoyed The Force Awakens when I first saw it. But on rewatching it after seeing The Last Jedi, it just doesn't hold up. And that is the problem. The Last Jedi retroactively makes The Force Awakens worse. And that is a huge problem because The Force Awakens rejuvenated the franchise. Love it or hate it, it got people wearing Star Wars t-shirts, Star Wars caps. After The Force Awakens came out, you saw Star Wars everywhere. It reawakened love of Star Wars in the general audience. And that is a big thing that is hugely significant. It was the most successful American movie of all time. That's a big deal. I don't think it's as good as it could have been or should have been. I was annoyed that it was a rehash of A New Hope, but it was fun. It was an enjoyable, pacey, Star Warsian experience. It in no way killed the franchise. It rejuvenated and rescued the franchise. But it asked questions that needed the right answers. It needed correct plot progression. You have setups, you have payoffs. That's just the way a narrative works. You have a twist. You have a setup and then a twist. You didn't get any of that. Everything that The Force Awakens set up was thrown out the window or over the shoulder of The Last Jedi. So, retroactively, The Force Awakens is not that good of a movie. When you line it up with The Last Jedi and watch them as one experience, I don't know why you would. I don't know why you would ever watch The Last Jedi again. I watch my fan edit because it's the only tolerable version of the movie I can watch. And I'm eagerly looking forward to Ivan Ortega's fan edit whenever that becomes available. I'm sure that will be a much higher quality technical, from a technical point of view, fan edit than my own. I'm interested to see if it's as good narratively as my own. Because again, I'm a writer. I do have some writing abilities with epic fantasy and science fiction. But I have very little technical ability. And if Ivan Ortega is an actual editor, he's probably a pretty good storyteller too. So, I'm very, very excited to see what he comes up with. But I don't even remember where I was with that. Oh, yeah. The Last Jedi, the only version I can watch is my fan edit, or hopefully Ivan's fan edit at some point. But if you watch them back to back, The Last Jedi makes The Force Awakens worse. Force Awakens asks questions that don't have answers, or they have stupid answers that contradict what it had established, like Rey's parents leaving the planet. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I really enjoyed The Force Awakens at the time it came out, but now that we have The Last Jedi, it ruins The Force Awakens. Except my fan edit. Maybe Ivan's. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you still love The Force Awakens? Did you ever love The Force Awakens? What did you think about how The Last Jedi impacts The Force Awakens? Please like this video if you liked it. Please hit subscribe, share on social media, and come back and visit me soon. Thank you. Jack out.